Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Mighty Brad's podcast. Today, I have Nick as a guest. Nick, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brad. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hey, thanks for being here, man. I'm very excited. So, I think in today's world, especially on the western side of the world, which you're kind of on the eastern right now, but it's life seems to go very fast. Everyone's so busy all the time. Nobody really gets to slow down. But I think it's really important, to look inside of yourself and just figure things out, right? And so, I wanted to ask you, how important do you think introspection is?
It's a good question. Introspection, I think it's all relative to the individual. I do think it's important personally, but some people have different views. Um, Introspection is highly important for personal growth and self awareness. It allows you to understand your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions, which will ultimately lead to better decision making and a deeper understanding of your values and your goals. Doing it regularly helps to identify areas for improvement in your life and also enhances emotional intelligence and fosters a more fulfilling life at the end of the day. um, Einstein said doing the same thing over and over again is insanity. And I think introspection allows is for you to really go inside, take a deeper look at areas of your life that maybe aren't working, um, and then altering, tweaking, or changing. Maybe it's a lifestyle change, whatever that is, and ultimately then use that to improve your life in various ways in whatever various field that is. But I also do want to say that, you know for some people, what I've noticed about this topic is that, yes, I'm big on introspection. I really enjoy it. I love the personal growth space, but some people actually don't want to hear that stuff. Some people are actually just completely content with who they are, and that's okay as well. There's a lot of this introspection that's been put online, especially if you're following one of the algorithms on one of the social platforms and you're into introspection. You'll see it'll like pop up all over your feed, and it pops up all over people's news feeds and stuff. And some people, like I said, just don't want to see it. So, I think it's very important. I think everyone should do it at some stage in their life. But if you're happy and content with who you are, then that's also totally okay. So I just wanted to say that as well.
Right. I mean, that is a good point. I mean, something I've thought about, for myself and just in general is like a lot of the times in life, I think on the surface level, ignorance can very much be bliss. It's like, if you're not aware of, what's going on and maybe the darker parts of yourself, it's like you don't have to worry about it, right? But then my mindset shifts over and I'm like, well, if I don't look inside of myself and, maybe there's one habit, maybe there's some flaw I have in social situations where the way I say something, angers every single person I come across, right? And so at that point, it's like, a lot of the times we can think, just because someone gets mad at you for something that you say doesn't mean it's your fault. But if everybody's getting mad, then maybe it is something you need to work on, right? And so a lot of the times it's like, oh, well, I don't need to work on that. That's fine. In some cases, you might not need to work on anything. But in a case like that, I think it's important to just look within because, I mean, at the end of the day, I think everybody, no, of course, nobody's ever going to be perfect, but there's always going to be things that you can improve upon. And for some, everybody is different, like you said before. For some of us, it takes a lot more inner work than others. Some people have it better put together without even going inside, right? I've met people that are, naturally uh, maybe happier than I was at a certain point or seem like they had their life together. And there's also the aspect of, someone might portray something or act a certain way, and then in reality, they might not actually be that, right? A lot of people who are not happy try to show people that they're happy, right? And they aren't actually. But
Yeah.
there's also the space of, some people have had a, near perfect childhood and there's nothing really in their subconscious mind that's negative, and they didn't have a ton of negative experiences, good parents, good, no, didn't get bullied at all, whatever, right? And so the point I'm trying to make is some people do have it better put together than others, but I think everybody can do at least a little bit of work, like you said, at some point in their lives.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Um, Everyone has a bit of childhood trauma. No parent is ever going to be perfect, but what people also need to realize is every parent did the best with the information that they had at that time in their lives. Every parent obviously wants the best for their children. Well, I would like to think so. So there's always going to be some underlying issue, whether it's major, whether it's minor. And yeah, like you said, I mean, it's good to go in there, and a lot of people are scared of doing so, but it's good to get in there and deal with those, bring them to the surface, and deal with them, because ultimately you're going to become a more resilient and stronger person. So
Right. And it gives you an opportunity to be aware and then grow yourself to the point where you feel more content and you feel more happy and you have better days. There's
exactly.
something what you just brought up about, your parents did the best they could with the information that they had. That reminded me of something that, I think about myself in the sense of there's been a lot of times in my life where I've looked back at the past and a situation where I may have said something or I did a certain action that now I look back and I'm like, oh, I can't believe I did that. It ruined this. It, didn't go over well, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, we make mistakes and we can always grow in those situations. But another thing I think about is, I can sit here and I can really beat myself up about what I did a year ago, or I could actually, sit down and figure out how I can change. And so, I can beat myself up about it, or I can say to myself, with the information that I had at that moment, I thought I made the best choice. I thought that was the right outcome, and maybe it wasn't, but at the time, I thought it was. So there's no point in looking back and beating yourself up for those situations. Is acknowledge the mistakes you make, acknowledge that maybe you could have handled it better, but ultimately you did the best that you could, and now you have the information of how everything played out, and now you can, when a similar situation or maybe the exact same situation happens again in your life, you can handle it differently. You know how this newfound experience and new information to deal with it in a better way, for example.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's a great way to look at regret, especially because, I mean, for me personally, that's how I've dealt with all of the challenges in the past. And obviously, everybody has, a problem. Well, not everybody, but most people will. They go into their own minds and they overthink a little bit. And exactly what you said, forgiving yourself and using that framework of, you did the best at that time in your life, which I think is really powerful. And whoever, your listeners, whoever has never heard of this before, I highly recommend that you do. Um, you know, just think back to those experiences. You did the best that you can, and move on from them. I know it seems easy for me to say that, and it is harder depending on the circumstances, but it's very much true. You also touched on happiness and fulfillment, and actually, I just wanted to share these. I just got my notebook out. There was 3 questions that when I was learning yesterday, that determine 99% of happiness. And I've only just learned them yesterday, but I thought I'd share them with your audience anyway. The first one is, what am I working on and why? That sounds like purpose. Who am I spending time with and why? And how well am I treating my body and why? And if you answer these 3 questions and you make sure that you are in a good space with what you're working on, you are spending time with the correct people, and you are treating your body well, correct nutrition, you will find that you will probably be fulfilled and happy no matter where you are in the world.
I think those are really insightful questions to ask yourself because I mean it's I think it can be overwhelming at the start. If you're at the start of like, all right, my life, I don't think my life is that great. I want to make it better. Sometimes, maybe there only two changes that you have to make, and your progress is going to skyrocket. And you're going to feel so much better. But I know for me personally, is like I had to change everything. So I had to ask myself those 3 questions plus 100 more, and figure out, what can I do in this area, this area, this area, this area. And I think it can be overwhelming at times, but I speaking of just those 3 things, taking it step by step and realizing that there are so many different factors that might be affecting you. Like it's like, all right, well, I feel like I've worked on getting my mental health to a pretty good place, but and I'm going to the gym too, but I don't know, my body doesn't really feel that well. And then ask yourself the question, all right, well, what am I eating? Am I eating a cheeseburger every day? Am I eating processed foods every day? Well, all right, that could contribute to that too. And there's all these different avenues and factors that could be making you feel a certain way and that affect your physiology and your mental, that without you even noticing it, um, noticing the reason why. You notice the feeling, but not the reason why. And diving into what those potential reasons might be, I think is really important because that's really the only step that you can take to bettering yourself in that sense. Because, if you keep going to the gym and you keep focusing on, concepts that, incorporating things into your life that make your mental health better, you can do all that. And that stuff is going to pay off and benefit you, but you're still going to have this underlying feeling because there's a part that's being neglected.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I agree. I think with regards to, you saying that you had these three questions and then 100 more, I think the best thing to do there is to not overcomplicate things and maybe just focus on one question at a time. So for example, focus at what am I working on and why, and then really go into there, figure that out, and then move on to the next question and then on to the next question. Because I know how overwhelming it can be when you're like, oh, there's areas in my life that I need to improve here, 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 here. A lot of the time that just causes more anxiety, more stress. So I think it's best to, really just narrow down, focus, take a step back and just focus on one at a time.
Right. And yeah, and I know in the past I struggled with, and I'm sure a ton of other people do too, is, just struggling with that idea of feeling like you need to get everything done so quickly. I think, we're so engulfed in instant gratification with our dopamine receptors and serotonin and all of the physical promotions that we have of that, for example, our cell phone, that, within other areas of our life pertaining to inner work, we want those instant results too. And it's like, it would be very nice if you could be happy tomorrow, but, if your life isn't that great, it's going to take time. And, it's like people can ask themselves, it's like, it's going to take so much time. It takes so much effort to go into the gym. It takes so much effort to try and boost my confidence and try to do this and this. It's like, yeah, it does take effort and it takes work and it takes time. But what's going to happen if you don't do that? Your life is going to suck for the rest of your life. Whereas, if you take a few months, a year, even 5 years to make yourself better, now the rest of your life, you don't have to deal with that anymore.
Yeah, for sure. On that note, Jim Quick had a really good question with people who struggle with, getting up and going to the gym, or basically just trying to hit their goals and not getting overwhelmed. And he said, what is the tiniest action I can take that will move me forward in the direction of my goal? So whether that's like getting up at, say you want to go to the gym at 5 a.m. Maybe on the first day you just get up at 5 a.m. and that's it. And then the next day you get up and you actually make it to the gym. And you just keep on working and keep on building and building. So what's the tiniest step? Like, what's the tiniest thing I can do that'll move me toward my goal, basically? And I think it's a
Right.
really powerful question because like overwhelm's a really big thing. If you give someone a task that is too difficult, they're just going to be immediately overwhelmed and demotivated, and they're not going to want to do it. They're not going to want to challenge themselves. Well, they're not going to want to reach that challenge. However, if you give them a task that is attainable, and then you break it down and you plan it into small, simple steps and take tiny little actions towards that goal, for people who do struggle with motivation and stuff like that, it's a very powerful question to ask yourself to start taking action.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and that reminded me of something that I used to do. I used to go running a lot in the morning, and what I would start to do is, occasionally I wouldn't get myself, out the door, and I'd be like, oh, I'll sleep in. I don't need to go running. What's the point, right? And what I started doing is I took my running shoes and I put them right next to my bed up in the morning.
Mm,
So I wake up and I step out of my bed and I see the running shoes, and at that point I'm like, well, shit, now I have to go running. I mean, it's right in front of me. And
mm,
so that's this tiny step, like literally just taking my shoes and putting them next to my bed and, holding, that's just, another degree of holding yourself accountable to the task that you want to get done. And then, those, whether it's a small task or a really difficult task, or a small or a big task right in the morning, that so often primes yourself and primes your mind for the day ahead of you. It's like if you start your day sluggish, just scrolling on your phone for a few minutes, and then you go to some other task that's not really um, mentally or physically stimulating in a positive way, then the rest of your day is going to feel sluggish. And actually, earlier today, I didn't start my day right, and for the next few hours, I felt myself just not feeling that great. And it's those little tasks in the morning that problem yourself for the rest of the day. Because once you get yourself up to, at the time, when I went running, it's, after I go running, it's like, all right, gonna take a cold shower after that. All right, now I'm feeling pretty good. Let me read a little bit of my book. Let me go do this and that, and then it's stepping stones from there, kind of naturally. And then on the flip side, if you start your day sluggish, like I did before, it's that multiplies, and like, all right, now more sluggish tasks are going on top of that, and then you start to feel like, all right, well, I don't need to get it done today, I can do tomorrow, and then you just keep pushing it off.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
You have your own podcast as well.
Yeah.
What was the whole motivation in starting that yourself?
So it it happened about 2 years ago where I was teaching here in Vietnam, and I was kind of feeling a bit stagnant in my job. And this could have been because of burnout, because of COVID, because it was that whole period. So I thought to myself, I've got a bit of extra time on the side. I really want to start something. What do I love to do? Well, I love meeting new people. I love personal growth. I love business. I love podcasts, listening to podcasts. So I thought to myself, sure, what maybe I could start a podcast. But then when you get this idea of starting a podcast, you're like, oh, well, what do I talk about? You've got to think of your brand. You've got to think of your target market, your audience, your customer, all of that stuff. And I'm fortunate in my life to have a mentor who was the co-host and sometimes still is the co-host of the ThinkerNick podcast. And I was just thinking to myself, who in my life could I lean on, in a sense, to learn from? And the whole concept was that I've got extra time. I want to create value so that I can learn, but not only that I can learn, that I can give back to other people who would like to learn. So the word leverage came into my mind. And what leverage basically means, for those who don't know, is when you leverage something for something else. So if you have something, you can use it in your favor, to gain something else. So I'm fortunate that my co-host was and business partner it happened to be a family member. And I was walking on a beach in an island off the coast of Vietnam, and that's when it both came to me. So I thought podcast, and I was like, but what am I going to do? And then the word leverage came to me, and I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pitch this idea to her and say, listen, you've been in business for, I don't know, 40, 50 odd years. She's an expert in her field. I asked her if she would be interested in giving back, because obviously people who have that sort of knowledge, when you do want to give that back. She was on board straight away. And the big thing for me with the whole podcast is, a lot of my childhood, I was asking myself the question, what's in it for me? What can I do for me? What can I do for me? But as soon as I reframed the question and I changed it to what's in it for you, in the sense that, okay, I can create a podcast, but if I do it for me, no one's going to listen. So I asked the question, what's in it for you? And basically put service at the front of my mind, because life ultimately is about service. It's what you can do for others. And because of that, like I said, she was totally on board. And then we started with business, and slowly business startups, beginner entrepreneurial stuff. And we've slowly segmented, which is with the podcast I host by myself, which is all on personal growth and development, like the one that we are currently doing now. And I just found that I absolutely love what I do. I love getting up, talking about the stuff, learning every day. I've noticed that learning every day is amazing for me, but I'm sure something we can get into further down the podcast is a bit of the information overload that we are receiving on all the different platforms online. But yeah, basically that's it. The podcast that's how it was that was its inception. I was on a beach in Vietnam, The word leverage came to mind. What can I leverage in my life that I can then build a side hustle? And I put the two together, and that was the creation of the podcast.
Right. That's great. Yeah, I know for me, I mean, at first it was difficult to even start it. And before my podcast now, and when I was in high school, I had one with a buddy of mine. We probably did 10 episodes or something, talking about somewhat similar concepts. We had people that we knew in our personal lives come on and sit down with us to talk about various topics. And then that stopped, and then it got to a point right before I went away to moving away to college somewhere down in Florida, probably like 4 days before I left or something. I was like, I love talking to people. I love podcasting. I want to start it. I just want to do it. And so right before I left, I had like two guests come over in the same day, and we recorded, banged out the podcast, and went really well. And then from there, it's just like, like yourself, it's just, meeting new people, listening to new ideas, and talking about, stuff that can help other people and that you love talking about yourself is, I mean, at the end of the day, it really is a blessing. I mean, it's like, like a lot of people could argue it's like, going through the experiences that you had to, learn the information that you now know. Oh, maybe I didn't want to go through that experience. But for me personally, something I've really learned over the past few months is that, for all of the painfulness and suffering of life, I really think the pain is what drives us. And it's what drove me to get to this point, because I would never have wanted to improve my life at all in the first place if I wasn't depressed, right? If I didn't go through all that pain, I wouldn't be where I am now, and I wouldn't have a podcast, and I wouldn't be meeting all the people that I do, and I wouldn't be talking about any of this stuff. I would probably just, be living my life, just still playing video games every day and not really doing anything, and that would probably be my life. But instead, I went through the pain, which of course, in a large sense, I didn't choose for myself, but it came upon me. I dealt with it for a while. I was able to overcome it, and now it's at this point where it's like, it would essentially be a disservice to not share the information with people. It's like, if I can come on here and just have a conversation with someone, and even if 100 people see it and just one person sees it, and it like genuinely changes their life, or they just take a few points and apply it to their lives, it's like, that is so worth it.
Hmm. I agree. Yep. Same for me.
There's been so many times in my life where I've gotten into a rut, and sometimes it only lasts, a day or two, and then I realize it and I get back on when I need to get going. But sometimes it'll last a week, sometimes it'll last 2 months, at a point might have lasted a year. And so my question to you is, why do you think we get into ruts in the first place, and how do you think we can kind of maneuver ourselves to make our way out of them?
Yeah, it's interesting question because it's obviously burnout is something that is a result of, it could also be a rut. But ruts basically occur due to a lack of novelty or motivation in our routines, and eventually, causing stagnation. And there's a huge decrease in productivity when you get stuck in a rut because you're really unmotivated. So to stay consistent and kind of avoid ruts, you've got to set yourself some clear goals, and you've got to, like we spoke about earlier, what is the tiniest action I can take? You've got to break that down into manageable steps. By manageable, I mean like they can't be too far out there, because then you're going to get overwhelmed and you're not going to want to achieve them. You also, it's very important to maintain a balanced routine, that work hard, but also you need to take time for yourself to recreate, to rest, to recoup, and all that. One thing that I do in my personal life with regards to routine is I follow something that I learned from Jay Shetty. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
Yes, I
Um,
am.
and he has a morning routine called Time, Time. And he does this every morning. T is for thankful, so something that you're thankful for. I is for insights. So whether that's learning from a book or reading a book, learning from a podcast, just basically some sort of insight, finding a motivational video, some sort of insight at the beginning of your day. M is for meditation. Could be 10 minutes. If you've never meditated before, start with 5, start with 2. You know, what's the tiniest step I can take? Because I know meditation is tough for people who've never done it. It's hard to sit with your thoughts sometime. And then E is for exercise. Exercise is obviously very important, and it has a whole lot of health benefits. So that's something that I personally use, and to be honest, it's really changed my morning. Like it kickstarts my day. I'm up early, I get all of that done, and I'm ready to smash the day. And then finally, or not just yet finally, but regularly review your progress that you've made. And then if something's not working, adapt those strategies, because if you don't, you, like I said earlier with the Einstein quote, doing the same thing over and over again, you're not going to hit any results. um, a lot of people in their environments become comfortable, and comfortability leads to complacency. So I think another thing is to assess your environment again. Who are you spending time with? And not even with regards to other people. So that's obviously a very, very important factor, because you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend time with, the most time with. But more so like your office space. Is there clutter around? Do you have a TV in your office space? Is there something distracting you? You need to figure out what is the best environment for you to be productive, and get the most work done in. And also, it could even be a change. So for example, if your environment is been the same way for the last 3 years, well, maybe that's the reason you're in a rut, because you're coming to the same thing, you're doing the same thing, it's monotonous, so you're just doing it over and over again. So maybe shift some things around, move your desk to the other side of the room, buy some plants, get some new books, I don't know, whatever it is, but shake up the environment a little bit as well. I think those are really, really important when it comes to getting out of a rut and staying
Yeah,
consistent as well.
definitely. And those are actually a few things that are reminding me of things that some actions that I've actually been taking in my life recently. Because for the past few weeks, I noticed some days where I'm not on track as much as I like to be. So I haven't read in a while. So within the last week, I've been picking up a book every day and learning new information. And with in terms of the environment, a lot of the time I'll do work in my room here, and this is where I go to bed, right? This is where I relax sometimes. And so I'll notice myself sometimes, picking up my phone next to me, and it's like, well, all right, well, why I'm picking up my phone? I need it, and so sometimes I get rid of my phone. And within the past few days, I've just been going to different environments. Like there's a place around 15-20 minutes from me that I like to go to occasionally. That's a public space that I can just nice open area, just get some stuff done. I've been setting up a table in my basement. It's very quiet down there. I'm all to myself, and so I just set up the computer there. I get it done. Nice day outside. I'll set up outside. I'll sit out there, and so just finding new ways and diversifying your area, I think. And I guess this is different for everyone. Like, so you could definitely set up a perfect area for yourself, or maybe just working in your room does work, or one specific area. But for me personally, recently I've been experimenting, just because it's nice to be in a different environment. I don't really like to be cooped up in my room all the time.
Mhm.
Some people do, of course, and that's okay. But to that, getting outside is essential. I mean, I think even if the weather isn't spectacular by you, just getting a breath of fresh air, going for a little walk, or just sitting outside is definitely a game changer. I mean, if I wake up and I spend the first 30 minutes in my room, my day is a lot different than if I wake up and within 5 minutes of me waking up, I go sit outside for 15-20 minutes. It's a huge difference.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no, those are good that you're taking those actions in your life. Nature is a huge one, and that's one that I've only learned. I've always enjoyed walking in nature, but I didn't know the science and the actual benefits that it actually has on your health. So yeah, well done to you, and for all your listeners, definitely incorporate nature as well if you're feeling like you're stuck in a rut, because it really does get the brain juices flowing.
Really, it really does. And I don't even know all the complete science behind it, but I know, for so many experiences in my life, and I know for other people too, it's like if you spend a certain period of time in your room just sitting there. It's like, being boxed in, your mind is in a sense sometimes limited. Whereas, for example, for me, I might be dealing with a certain issue and uh, an argument I have with someone, or just something I'm working on with myself, or something I'm working on, or whatever it is. And if I sit in my room for 3 hours and think about it, I might not find an answer. But I go for a 5 minute walk, get move my body a little bit, get some fresh air, and I'm just walking, and then the answer just comes to me like that. Right? There's just something. Of course, it doesn't help 100% of the time, but definitely in the percentages of 80 to 90% of the time, it really helps. And it's just, like I said before, it just makes all the difference.
For sure. Yeah.
There's a lot of people that say that in your teenage years and in your 20s you should just party, and you can work later, you can do everything that's I guess important at a later date, and now you can just have fun, go clubbing, go drink. And so my question to you is, do you think people should work hard during their 20s, or do you think they should party, or do you think there could be a healthy mix of both?
So the right approach depends on each individual's preferences and their long-term goals. So when you're 20 and having that long-term mindset, I only know, to be honest, one guy in my life who was extremely disciplined. No, two guys in my life who were extremely disciplined, and they had the long-term picture in mind. It's not easy to do. And a lot of people do learn that as they get older. Like as you get from 20 to 30, then you're like, oh, wow, okay, now that's a bit of a wake-up call. I need to start thinking long-term. But, balance is key. So while enjoying your 20s and socializing, I think is important, you've got to be disciplined, and you need to be working towards, either your personal or your career goals that can set you the strongest foundation for the future going forward. You want a healthy balance between, having fun, but also making the right decisions, responsible decisions that align with your aspirations. I also want people to know that everything up to this point in your life has shaped who you are today. So like the comparison is the thief of joy. So if you have someone who you think's doing better, you think, and I say that, um, I say you think because it's all about what you think, and it actually doesn't really matter. Um, what I mean by that is you're in your own head because you think that someone's doing better than you, but it's all relative because success is relative, right? You could only want a family, maybe have a 3-bedroom house, a dog, and 2 kids, and you don't want to be super, super, super wealthy. Whereas you might have some mates who are already super wealthy and they've got this amazing lifestyle, but it doesn't matter because it's all relative to what you want. So when I say that everything up until this point in your life has shaped who you are today, it means that all the experiences have created the person that you are. And hindsight is a real thing because when something happens up until this point and you're like, oh, sure, I should have done that back then, but you didn't know that. Again, it goes back to you do the best with the information that you had at the time, right? So personally, if I could go back, I would have done a lot less partying and a lot more learning. I really, really love to learn now, but I didn't love to learn at 20. I really enjoyed socializing with my friends, but I wasn't at the point in my life where I was ready to start learning and growing then. So it's okay. Again, like you were saying about looking at the past and how we spoke about touched a little bit on regret. It's the exact same thing. Um, I think for me, a big turning point was I had a bit of an accident running a half marathon last year. And it was because I wasn't looking after my health properly. I was, going out with my friends too much. And then I was also trying to exercise too much. And that was a massive wake up call for me. But a lot of times it is a serious incident or event or trauma that generally switches someone from that mindset. So I do sympathize with people who do still like to party and maybe don't, always make the right decisions. But I also want to say to people that, that's okay. It is okay to do that, but you need to have the long-term goal in mind. And if that's something that you struggle with, I recommend that you lean on someone or search or seek out the people that you know in your life that are good at that, who are good at having a long term picture, and maybe just have a chat with them, you know, or ask them how they did it or how they view the future, and then maybe adopt that model and implement it in your own life.
Right. Yeah, I mean, uh, really great points you just made. And yeah, I do think everyone's different, and times for certain aspects and tasks come for different people. I mean, I'm only 19. I mean, a big thing for me is, I think about my future in the sense of like if I spend the next 4 to 8 years mostly partying and not really getting work done that I like to get done, or person or develop myself in all these different ways. It's like, where am I going to be there? And that, to me, that's an ugly picture, right? But that's me. I mean, there's a lot of other people, like you just said, like maybe yourself at 20, who, you know, it didn't really matter to you, and you're still content at 5 years later, whatever, and then starting the journey then, and everyone's different, because, and like you said, success is relative, and everybody's mindset of everything is so different. So if I don't do anything, I could get to 28 years old, for example, and be miserable with my life, but someone else could party for 20 to 28 and not be miserable, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, of course. It's just everybody's, the goals that I have, that what I want to do with my life, I can't go out and party that much because it wouldn't benefit me. But if somebody has certain different goals and they have a certain other thing planned out and they can fit this in and do this multiple times a week, okay, right? And I don't think, of course, excessive drinking, excessive smoking, excessive partying, excessive anything is obviously horrible for your health. But there's I can't sit and tell people that you can't ever drink and you can't ever do this stuff. I can't come out and say that because there's ultimately, I think, if you want to live a super super disciplined life without any vices, great. But if you want to do certain things sometimes, there's, in my eyes at least, there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm, yeah, no, for sure. I agree. I think, again, it goes back to balance is key, and you need to find the right balance that works for you. And I'm going to go back to environment again. Put yourself in a healthy environment. If you find that you're partying too much, remove yourself from that environment and put yourself in an environment where you can find the right balance that works for you.
Right. And yeah, I mean, I really think it is about, finding different environments and, just approaching different people like in physical reality and making new connections and meeting new people. It's like, for example, when I was at college, there was someone in a public speaking class that I took. And after one day, like, the professor was asking questions, and I thought he gave a super in-depth, insightful answer. And so after class, I introduced myself to him. We did a podcast together. We still talk. Super disciplined guy, super great guy. And it's like, just making that physical effort to just introduce yourself to someone, and give yourself the opportunity to meet someone new and meet new people that are on a similar or the same wavelength as you and have the same goals as you. It's like that. It's super beneficial because I know in that time for me, I struggled a lot with not having like-minded individuals around me. But when I was able to put myself out of my comfort zone and start reaching out to people and start actually approaching people, that's when things change. That's when I 5 minutes into the conversation with someone, me and the person I'm talking to realize, hey, we kind of think alike. We maybe we're gonna be friends, right? And, it's just cool stuff like that. Whereas certain things in life, I know, like I used to have super bad social anxiety. Whereas like little things that seem so big, it's like I can't go up to that person. I can't introduce myself. No way. That's way too scary. What's the point? Et cetera, et cetera. But you don't know what good can come, and if you just put yourself out of your comfort zone just a little bit, it not only helps you grow and not be as fearful of it, but the benefits and the outcome of it could be incredibly positive, and you just don't know it at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Speaking of, you know, on the aspect of confidence, I know myself, I just mentioned the social anxiety, but overall, as a whole, I was super unconfident in, I don't know, my physical, my physical appearance, the way I thought, everything about myself I didn't like, right? And I've taken a bunch of steps to, of course, change that and get to where I am now. What is your advice or take for people who aren't confident and they want to start to develop their confidence in themselves?
Yeah, confidence is a real thing. This is actually something I've just developed a program that's on pre-sale, which focuses on this, building confidence and finding purpose. And I looked into this topic quite a bit, and I'll sum it up right at the end. But basically, if you want to build self-confidence, to make it simple for your audiences, you have to start small and you have to keep every single promise that you make to yourself. Because if you think about it, if I say I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. and then I don't get up at 5 a.m., that's already a small defeat. And then say you'll go to work and you'll say, I'm going to have a salad. And then, well, you didn't get up at 5 a.m. So, I don't actually need to have a salad. I'll have a burger instead. And these accumulating small defeats ultimately lead to a lack of self confidence. So if you keep every single promise that you make to yourself, you will find that your confidence will start to grow. And again, it goes back to the tiniest step that you can take. So if you start waking up, I'm just going to use this as the example, at 5 a.m., wake up at 5 a.m. And even if that means that, you woke up at 5 a.m., I don't know, you got up, you brushed your teeth, you did a bit, and then you were still tired. And then I don't know, you slept again for, I don't know, 20 minutes, then got up for work. You still got up at 5 a.m. It's still a tiny step in the right direction, and then continue to build on that. So that's the most important thing, is you always need to show up for yourself first, and always keep promises that you make to yourself. The other thing is to always show up for others. So if you say you're going to do something, do it. If you say you're going to be somewhere, be there. Stay committed, because ultimately you will find that, one, you become a reliable person. And if that's the energy that you're putting out, that's the energy that you're going to get back. And then when you surround yourself with other people, you're going to find that, oh, actually, hang on, I am a confident person. I'm a reliable person. I keep every promise that I make to myself, but I also keep every promise that I make to others. Another thing is self-acceptance. So you need to embrace your strengths and weaknesses without any harsh judgment. No one's perfect. Everyone's different. Again, I go back to comparisons, the thief of joy. Do not compare yourself to others. This is your life. These are the cards you were dealt, and now work with them. Skill development's another one. You got to challenge those negative thoughts, and you've got to replace them with affirmations. Good affirmations. What's your self-talk like? How are you talking to yourself inside? Are you saying, I can't do this, I can't do this? Or are you saying, what, actually, I'll give this a shot, and if I fail, it's okay? A lot of people are afraid of failure because they think that that's it. But actually, failure is the best thing that can happen to someone, because it teaches you the best lessons in life. And then, yeah, like I said, the small successes, take the tiniest action and start moving in the right direction in whatever area that is in your life, is super important to boost self-confidence. So to sum it all up, basically, do the things that you say you're going to do, and don't do the things you shouldn't be doing. And ultimately, taking those small, tiny steps will compound and will lead to your self-confidence slowly starting to boost.
Right. Those were all great. And yeah, I mean, though this, it's really, I mean, it's going back to, what we keep saying is, it's those small steps, like those super tiny steps. It could be a task that takes 1 minute to do that really changes everything and, primes your mind. And in this case, gets you to actually boost your confidence. And another point you made about, failure allowing you to learn things is, having that mindset of, when you fail, of course you don't want to fail, right? You want things to go well. But when you do fail, realize the mistakes that you made, or whatever consequence of an action or an inaction that you took happened. And failure is such a great opportunity for growth. It's like sometimes you can even learn so much more in the smaller big failure that just happened than if you're just winning all the time. Because if you're just winning, it's like this. It's like, oh, yep, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good, right? And then, something happens to be like, oh, well, I thought I was feeling good, but now this took me down here. But now I'm learning this lesson, and now instead of doing this good, I'm now doing this good. And so it's all these little things that, these little failures where we perceive as a super negative event that really does help us propel into a better place than we were in before that we didn't even imagine we could get to.
Yeah, I think another thing is when it comes to goal setting as well, um, set those goals, but then achieve them. And what I mean by that is you keep that promise to yourself. Because when you do that, again, it builds self confidence. People, this sounds really simple, but it's actually quite profound. Understanding that you can only get to where you want to go from where you are now is super powerful. People need to evaluate, where am I now? Maybe my self-confidence isn't very high right now. I have this goal, I want to achieve this goal. I can only get there from where I am now. Evaluate your situation, put in the right strategies, plans, mechanisms to get in place. Keep every promise that you make to yourself, and I promise you, I promise you that you will build self-confidence. I think learning new stuff as well is really great, especially in a social setting. You mentioned social anxiety before, but if you know a little bit about a lot, you will find that you will be able to converse with many, many, many different people. You don't have to be an expert in a particular field, although that is obviously very, very, very cool. But if you just know a little bit about a lot and you go to a social gathering or a party, you'll be able to spark conversations with so many different people, and you'll eventually find that you will just have the confidence to just speak effortlessly. And then something that's really powerful is you are what you think, right? So the way that you are, I'm going to touch back on self talk. The way that you are talking to yourself, or the way that you think, is ultimately the way that you are going to portray yourself in the world. So if you think that, if you're saying to yourself, I'm not a confident person, that's a limiting belief, and ultimately then you are going to act like that. But if you say to yourself, you know what, I don't have the best confidence, but I can work on this, or maybe I could become a confident person. It's very important to change that, positive self-talk. And then another thing to notice in a sort of social setting is surrounding yourself with the right people. Again, is the way you talk to other people is the way that you talk to yourself. So sort of take a minute to evaluate how you are speaking to other people, because often that is a result of actually how you're speaking to yourself. I don't know if you've ever been in a social setting where you find someone who's real cynical or negative, or is like a pessimist, and they're always focusing on the negatives. Well, it's kind of a reflection of what's going on internally. So for people who are struggling with confidence, I think all of those points that we've mentioned are really important, but also evaluate the way that you are treating and speaking to other people, because often that is the way that you are internalizing things and speaking to yourself inside.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know when I was in a dark place, I would talk about things like that and be real cynical and just talk about negative stuff and I mean, kind of bring other people down because I wasn't doing well, right? And now
Mm,
after doing the growth, and I can see that I saw that within myself, and I can see that within other people now. It's like when everyone knows that one person, maybe in their personal life or someone that they just know of, that's just always trying to bring everyone down and is always negative with every single situation ever, and they can never see the positive in anything. And that is essentially a reflection of what's on inside of their mind. And so, when they might be saying something that's trying to get you offended or angry you, et cetera, you know, initially when someone says something, you might feel that anger, but take a second to realize that it essentially really isn't anything personal to you. It's just that's what they're dealing with, and they're projecting that out onto other people in the outer world. And it hopefully one day, or maybe even you could point that out to them, and they could make that growth happen for themselves. But
hmm
sometimes that doesn't happen, and sometimes that's just the way they're going to be. And to that, I say, you just gotta distance yourself from those types of people. And if I could go back and say to people who knew me at that time a few years ago when I was like that, man, stay away from me.
Yeah,
Stay. You
for
gotta
sure.
you gotta stay away from those people because
Yeah.
it's like you could really trying to be doing good stuff for your life, but if that person's always around you, then it's that they're really gonna. It's gonna be like you're climbing a ladder, and every few times you get up a few handles, that person like drags you down five more, and then it's just an endless cycle of you trying to get to where you're going, and them just keep slowly dragging you down and taking
Hmm.
your energy from you, and that's
Yeah,
it's there's nothing worse.
for sure. Yeah. With pointing out, with maybe pointing out people's flaws, just be very mindful and careful. If it's a really close friend, I mean, I'd love my best friends to, tell me the truth, but just be very mindful as you might offend someone and maybe they don't want to hear it. But I do think, yeah, it can be powerful, but I would keep that to your close friendship circle rather than just pointing out to any old person that, hey, there's something wrong with you, because some people
Yeah,
don't take it the right way.
definitely. I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't. Yeah. So you've done a decent amount of traveling. What have you learned from going to different places and meeting different types of people?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of traveling. Well, I suppose around the world, but a heck of a lot in Southeast Asia, whereas where I currently am. And there's been a few places that have sort of come to my mind where I've kind of learned some lessons along the way. And the first one I would say is Bali in Indonesia. They have a really big community in the mindfulness space. A lot of yogis, a lot of it's a lot of spirituality and stuff like that. So I think from going to Bali and stuff, that was a culture that really opened my eyes into mindfulness. I know they do a lot of yoga courses, and I've had some friends and family relatives who have actually been there and done the yoga courses, and have only had incredible things to say. I obviously started meditating about a year ago, and that's obviously had a big impact on me as well. And then from Vietnam, I learned forgiveness. And the reason why I say this is because there was obviously the Vietnam War, and with, America and France and everyone who was involved. And I'm now living in the country, and these people are so forgiving. They hold no sort of resentment or hate. They are super welcoming to all nationalities, but especially obviously to the Americans. And if I look at my own country, there is a dark history there in South Africa, and there's obviously still that resentment, conflict, and uprising. So I think what Vietnam has taught me is forgiveness. Ultimately, if you don't forgive someone, I know it's difficult, especially given the circumstances, depending on what it is. But whatever you don't forgive, ultimately you end up suffering from, because you're holding on to that. And to be honest, like, you have no control over anyone else's actions. You only have control over how you can respond to them. And I would encourage people to, forgive and move on, because ultimately you can only control your own life, and whatever other people do is a reflection of them and not yourself. And then I've just recently been to Japan, which was an incredible experience. And there's an awesome Japanese, I would say, old Japanese literature, or sort of framework or concept called ikigai. And there's actually a book on it, and I encourage people to go read it. But it's basically a concept that talks about having purpose and motivation in life. So this concept represents basically an intersection of four elements: what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be rewarded for. So it's basically the pursuit of finding your purpose and, that fulfillment and balance in life, and then aligning these elements. So Ikigai is really powerful because it encourages people to discover their passion, their skills, and how they can contribute to society, all while basically, you know, making an income and living a life that you truly want to live. So yeah, I'd say from those three countries, those were some powerful lessons that I learned.
I've actually never been out of the country yet, but traveling to that part of the world is something that I can't wait to do, and I'm so excited for. Because it's like, you know, you look at, in Vietnam, you said, so a lot of the people, the culture itself is, very forgiving, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of people in America aren't very forgiving. Of course, that's not the entirety, a generalization of people, but hearing that there is an actual culture for something like forgiveness and things of that aspect is, that's a beautiful thing to hear, and I can't even imagine to actually see and
Mhm.
experience in reality.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sure. I recommend anyone, if you put Japan on your next to go list, because it was an absolutely mind blowing experience, and they've got a lot of cool, concepts. Not just ikigai, but there's a few others that I won't touch on now that are really really profound and really really powerful. So I encourage people to get on a plane and get there if you have the means and if you can.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many, so many distractions in today's world, and it's really, and so many times in my life, and in everyone's, I think, it's hard to find times to really double down and focus on what you want to accomplish. You start something 5 minutes later, you get distracted by this, you get distracted by that, and then an hour passes, and you're gonna get anything done. How do you think we can really get in that space of being focused on what we want to accomplish without getting distracted 24/7?
It's a really good question. The first thing I would say would be you have to focus on your well-being. So a healthy mind is a healthy body, and if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. So once you get your health and your routine in order, and you focus on your well-being first, then you can start focusing on some other, areas in your life, such as, uh, you know, once you've got your well-being, you also need to learn to say no. So you need to establish boundaries. So you might be invited to a party on the weekend, or you might really want to go do this with your friends when you know you should really be doing something else. Establishing boundaries is a very powerful way to, you know, focus on something and get rid of those distractions. A lot of people are people pleasers and they don't even realize it. This again goes back to introspection. And if you don't think you're a people pleaser, you should look at what people pleasing actually is, because there's a lot of different factors that fall into people pleasing, and you'll be surprised. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I think everybody's guilty of people pleasing to some extent. Not saying it's always a bad thing, because people pleasing can actually also be a good thing in some circumstances, but majority of the time it's not. Another thing would be to plan. And what I mean by that is do simple things like write a to-do list the night before you go to bed. What that does is that you then sleep on that, knowing what you have to do when you wake up. So when you jump out of bed, you spring out of bed and you get straight to it. Whereas if you're not doing stuff, if you're not writing that to-do list and you wake up, then in the morning you do your morning routine, then you sit down at your office desk, and then you've got to then think, oh, what do I have to do to it's just an extra distraction that you don't need. And it'll make you far more productive if you do write a to-do list the night before. There's also something called the Pomodoro technique. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, which is
I haven't.
basically, oh, it's really cool. It's basically, I forget who created the framework, but it's basically you put a timer on for 25 minutes and you do some deep work for 25 minutes, and then you take a 5 minute break, and then you just repeat that cycle. And that's a really, really good productivity tool. Mindfulness is another big thing. We're often caught up in our own heads, and overthinking is a big thing. And there's nothing, well, I wouldn't say there's nothing better, but one of the best things to do is to journal. Get those thoughts down on paper, get them out so that you can clear your mind to be as focused as possible. Get rid of all of those ants, what they called are anxious negative thoughts in your head. And then obviously we touched on environments already, a positive workspace, and surround yourself with people who believe in you and, maybe want to do the same as you. And a great one would be to use technology to delegate. So what I mean by that is, if there's certain tasks that that you can delegate to someone else, or there's an application nowadays, there's AI and there's all this stuff that can do stuff for you, delegate, get someone else to do it, or put your trust in another app so that you can free up some time to work on the things that you really want to, It'll also help you with distractions. Another thing, obviously, the simple one is to put your phone as far away as possible when you're working, because I'm so guilty for that. I often just quickly pop on to reply to a text and then get sucked back into my phone. So I think those are powerful. We spoke about the time management technique, Pomodoro. That's the one that I'll be using. And then also goal visualization is another powerful thing, because by keeping your goals in mind, this will help you to stay motivated and give you that direction. You need to know exactly what you are working towards, and it needs to be meaningful enough for you to want to achieve. So I think, yeah, when it comes to all the distractions that we face, I think those are some pretty good strategies that you could use.
Yeah, all those are absolutely incredible, and that technique, I'll have to look more into that and test and try that one out myself. Nick, I really appreciate you coming on today. It's been a blast.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely, man. I hope I added value to your audience, and yeah, it was absolutely great. I love talking about this stuff, so I'm glad you're in the same sort of industry, or have the same sort of how do I say, the same sort of passion as me.
Right. Where can people check you out and check out all your content?
So I think if you just type in ThinkerNick on the link tree on Google, you will find my newsletter that I put out every week. I have a lifestyle program that focuses on well-being, purpose, and health. And then also we're on the podcast that comes out every 2 weeks is on basically all your platforms at ThinkerNick Pod or at ThinkerNick on Instagram, Facebook, or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, basically all your main programs. I mean, platforms. Sorry.
Right. All right. Sounds great. You guys go check out all of the next stuff. We'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.
Fantastic. Thanks.